Okay, good. We're there. Can everybody hear me okay? I think, sorry for that delay. I was just getting used to Adobe Connect. Good, which I haven't used for a while, but that's the world of online for you, isn't it? Good. I don't know if Anka's going to say anything first, or whether I should just begin. Okay, yeah, I'm just going to begin. Fine. So thank you very much for coming today. How are you all? Lovely to see you. Really lovely to be with you. I was last in Romania, at your conference, of course, 5 or 6 years ago. And here I am again, albeit in a very 2020 style. Whatever way, it's very nice. I know you're a great group of teachers, and I'm really pleased to be here with you. So my talk today is about practical ways to deal with the challenges that are posed by teaching online rather than face-to-face. And the first thing I should say is I know you're probably all very experienced in this. You've probably taught more online than I have, I'm sure, and certainly collectively you have. And I guess because we've all faced these challenges, I'd love to engage in a kind of dialogue with you, and as best we can through the chat box, and to get your thoughts about the challenges and possible solutions of teaching online. So I'm not pretending to know it all by any means. I just want to put forward a few ideas and a few suggestions for things that seem to be common problems with this. So the first thing I'd like to do, is just to ask you a few questions. Now, I could have done this in a poll on Adobe Connect, but I think what I'd rather do is just ask you the questions through the chat box. And if you could just put, I just want one-word answers really, like yes, no, or what the name of something is. And then that will help me to see how quickly, all these tools are slightly different, how quickly the chat box is moving and how possible it is for me to exchange with you at other parts during the other stages during the presentation, or if it's kind of moving fast and it's difficult for me to catch what you're writing. So here we go. So just a few questions, simple questions about teaching online. And so the first one is, I'd like to know what tools you use. Do you use Zoom, Facebook Live, Skype, Adobe? So that's the first question. What tool are you mainly using? Meet would be another one. Okay, Teams, yeah, okay. Good, I'm getting Cisco Meet, good, okay. Google Classroom also, Messenger, wow. We've got quite a variety here, which is interesting, but it seems to be, yeah. Google Meet, some people use WhatsApp, interesting, okay. Google Classroom, okay, Meet, WhatsApp, okay. So people are using a whole variety of tools, that's fantastic. A lot of people using Zoom, Cisco WebEx, which I'm not familiar with, so that's not something I'm able to comment on, I'm afraid. Google Classroom I know is a fantastic tool, very sort of versatile tool. Okay. Good. Okay, so the next Moodle platform. Wow, this is impressive. Okay. Okay, so my next question for you. I've got a sort of general idea. My next question is, overall, do you find online teaching relatively easy and straightforward? Overall, it's kind of, if you like, compared to classroom teaching, but generally, do you find it easy? Okay. So we've got a mixed bag of answers now. One person says it's challenging. overall, people saying yes, it's okay. Yeah, so very mixed bag. We'd probably split about 50-50 here on those who find it easy and those who don't really. Maybe you found it easier. Maybe you find it easier now, and you didn't find it so easy at the beginning. That was certainly the case with me. I certainly had to think about it quite a lot and adapt my techniques to it because it's different. It's simply different. But then again, I'm older and maybe slightly less technology proficient than some of you. Okay, more energy consuming. Absolutely, Catalina. I think that's a very, very good comment, a true comment. Okay, so my third question for you then. This is working fine because I can read your answers. Someone says, it is easy now, but they were scared at first. Yeah, fantastic. So the third question, yes, is overall, would you say that you like teaching online? Would you say that you liked it overall? So it's kind of a similar question in a way to the last one. But overall, would you say you liked teaching online? Okay, good. And we've got a lot of positive answers here, first of all, then a few negative ones. Okay, not really, not so much. Yeah, more or less. Juana loves it. Great. Yeah. Okay. So again, a mixed bag, but on the whole, generally positive. Generally positive. And someone, yes, it says they've learned to like it. Yeah. I think that's like anything, isn't it? When it's quite difficult to do, when you find it difficult, you're much less likely to enjoy it. And as you get better at it, of course, you enjoy it more. Okay. And my last question, this kind of pertains really to the title of my talk, which is this question. Do you feel more close to your students, less close to your students, or about the same? Do you feel more close to your students, less close to your students, or about the same? Okay, so the vast majority here are saying less. There's less intimacy, there's less closeness. Okay, we will address that point, that problem or issue in a moment also. Excellent. Okay, good. And someone says about the same. Yeah. Okay, a little less. Good. Okay, well, those are my questions. That was just to understand really your situation and to understand your feelings about online teaching. And I'd say probably they kind of correspond quite closely to my feelings about it. So let's go. Let's get on with the talk and the issues around. So I've identified three main issues. As I say, you may find there are, or you may well think there are other issues. My screen isn't moving now. One second, I'm trying to move my slides, but without success. Okay. My bandwidth, yeah, it's just moving quite slowly. The computer here. I don't know if that's to do with the number of people or... Okay, whoops, and now I've gone through. I thought that might happen. I kept banging the move forward button, and now I've gone through several slides all at once, and I've now got to go back slowly, one by one. Excuse me for the delay. I should tell you, in the meantime that a lot of my teaching is done with kids in Gaza, in Palestine, where the internet connection is absolutely terrible. And that's really had put me on my toes quite a lot. I've had to really think of ways of how you deal with that sort of situation where they can hear you, but you can't hear them. That kind of adaptive teaching. So that's quite an important feature of this. Good, let's go. Okay, fantastic. So here we are. So I've identified, the link seems a little bit better now. Good. I've identified or singled out 3 main problems or challenges of teaching online. The first one is the question of passivity. That is to say, students are in a more passive role, and student interactions. You can't effectively, mainly pair work, in fact, group work, it's not so easy to engineer those kinds of interactions. The second thing is checking understanding. It's easier in a face-to-face situation to check understanding than it is online. And the third one is about getting feedback. How do I know whether they've enjoyed something or not? So those are the things we're going to look at one by one, and we're going to look at different ways of dealing with those issues. Can I just check that everyone, I'm sorry about that little delay in the slide showing, can everyone hear and see me in proper time now, or am I quite jerky, or how is it working? Everything okay? Good, 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 good. I'll carry on. So the first issue then that I wanted to highlight was the question of passivity and student-to-student interactions. So we're faced with this problem that the normal classroom interactions, that what we do very often with pair work and priming students for another activity through the use of pair work, becomes much more difficult to engineer. And as a result, we end up with more teacher-led activity. And by consequence, the students then also adopt perhaps a more passive role. So the question is, how do we deal with that issue? So I've got several solutions. As perhaps one of the most important issues in online teaching, I've got several solutions for this. The first one, and I hope my slide catches up in a minute with me. You can hear a buzzing noise, someone says. Okay. So the first one is that we need to become more animated and more active in our delivery. That doesn't actually, what I mean by that, that doesn't actually mean more, you have to engage in some huge performance. Not all of us are natural born performers. But what we can do is we can tell stories. We can add interest to our teaching. Let's just go back a little bit to the beginning of the presentation. And I think I said to you at the beginning, I don't want to tell you things that you know already, because I know everyone's very experienced. And I used a certain expression. I don't want to teach my grandmother to suck eggs. Well, when I was thinking about, when I was writing the presentation, I thought about that phrase, I don't want to teach my grandmother to suck eggs. And I wondered, where does that come from? Where does that come from? Because I never saw my own grandmother sucking eggs. I don't know if any of you did. Has anyone ever seen a grandmother or an older person sucking eggs? And what kind of eggs are those anyway? Are they boiled eggs? Are they raw eggs? What's the idea? So I looked it up. I thought it was an interesting thing to look up. And it seems like so no one's seen their grandparents. Oh, someone has. Lawrence has seen them, I think. Yes. But no one else has. Okay, good. And I looked it up, and the expression is quite an old expression. It's about 500-600 years old. And the idea of granny is a kind of generic granny. It just means an old person. And the idea, it's not a very nice, yes, it's raw eggs, absolutely right. It's that idea that you take an egg, everyone see it, and you, with a pin, you prick it, bump, at one end, and then at the other end, and then you suck out the middle of the egg. It's a raw egg. I'm not a fan of raw eggs myself. And this phrase has come about because it was the only thing that old people in those days who had very few teeth could easily eat. Yeah. So, just a little story, a little bit of background. When I say become more animated, I mean that kind of thing. This egg particularly is an interesting egg. I don't know if you can see now. I don't know if this is going to work. This is my grandson's favorite egg. And do you want, I'll show you why it's my grandson's favorite egg. Are we ready? Whoop. I'll just do that again, perhaps from a higher place. Woo. Yeah, it's made of, can you guess what it's made of? It looks like an egg, but it's made of If somebody just visited the Egg Museum. Good. Yes, it's made of rubber, plastic, in fact, yeah. And he plays this trick on me all the time whenever he comes here. He pretends to drop the egg, and I think, oh no, it's going to break, it's going to break. I have to pretend that I think it's a real egg. Okay, good, good. So that's the first thing, to become more animated, just to add, and as I say, very often that means just adding stories, adding anecdotes as you go. The second thing that's important is to keep this always a collective endeavour, to keep referring to students and at any time during the lesson, so that the students don't know when they're going to be called on. That will help them to be more active. So you're doing slightly less pair work, but in fact, you are trying to involve them in each stage. So in the setup to activities, in the reading of texts. I don't know, probably people do this anyway. Their students read aloud. They get their students to read aloud. In explanations, get them to read rubrics, question them. So we'll involve them also in explanations and student-to-student explanations. Just as an example, we'll look at this text. So we say to the students, we're going to read a story, and it's about the Niagara Falls. Does anyone know where Niagara Falls is? And the students may offer their answers. You might offer answers, I don't know. And okay, it's between Canada and the USA. Good. And does anyone know what it's famous for? And the students pitch in with their answers. They may say, no, it's the biggest waterfall. It's a big waterfall somewhere in the world. Good. Okay. Fantastic. And then you focus their attention on the picture. What's happening in the picture? What can you see? So ask someone to read the title. It's the tightrope across the Niagara Falls. Where's the tightrope? Can someone see the tightrope? And they point it out. And so on and so forth. So you're constantly involving them. When you actually come to look at the text itself, then you get students to take it in turns without telling them which to read the text aloud as well, helps their pronunciation, and keeps them involved, keeps them actively involved. That's absolutely critical. You might then, there's some words at the bottom here that the students have to know before they read. One of them is cheer. So you might ask them what noise they read the definition, ask a student to read the definition. So it says to shout because you like something there. Okay, and then you ask the students, okay, can you cheer? And they sort of make a noise or whatever. Then you ask another student, can you now explain the word cheer to Andrea? Can you explain the word cheer to Christina? And so on. So constantly calling on students, involving them, keeping them on their toes because they don't know when they're going to be called on. Okay, it's a way to keep them active. The next thing is to maintain an element of surprise. How do we do that? We do that by varying the activity. How long, could I just ask you now, how long are your sessions? How long usually is an online session? Do you teach for an hour or 90 minutes, or how long is it usually? So 50 minutes, okay. So 50 minutes, not too bad. I've heard some people saying they teach much longer sessions, like 90 minutes. 30 minutes, shorter, maybe that's for younger learners, I don't know. Somebody who has 90 minutes, okay. Certainly with either longer sessions or 75 minutes, someone. So certainly either with longer sessions or with sessions with younger learners, it's great to break up the activity with different physical activities. So you can do like little exercises. One nice one that a Brazilian teacher showed me some years ago. There are others like this. I'm just going to show you this one. I hope my video screen isn't too jerky. You can do it with me if you want. You're absolutely welcome to. So I'm going to stand up. And here we go. So we're going to go through the stages. It's actually a kind of yoga exercise, but it's a yoga exercise that encompasses a little bit of language learning with it. Are you ready? So here we go. Pick the flower. Smell the flower. Blow out the candle. Lift your hands. Put them together. Bring them to your heart. Open your heart and spread the love. Okay, once more. Again, you can do it with me if you like. Pick the flower. Smell the flower. Blow out the candle. Raise your hands. Put them together. Bring them to your heart. Open your heart and spread the love. Okay. It's nice because, as I say, because it combines a little bit of language learning with exercise, with a physical activity. It's good, something you can do in the middle of a session just to break monotony, shake people up a bit. So you can do various activities physically. You can do it visually as well. Sorry, my video is laggy. That's annoying. It is a bit laggy for me as well. So let's just see if we can see a picture. So I'm going to show you some pictures. So as you know, National Geographic materials, National Geographic I work for, have lovely visual materials. You can also extend that out and try and look for other pictures online to stimulate students. So this particular picture, the first picture I'm going to show you, is about, if my screen will move on, here we go, is from a unit in Life Upper Intermediate, and it's actually an introduction about to the topic of art and creativity. I don't know if anyone is familiar with this picture, but perhaps you'd like to tell me what this woman is doing. And the activity I want you to use it for, is for teaching the present continuous, and the idea of talking about people doing everyday things. I will repeat the commands later, Alina, certainly. So, can anyone see what the woman is doing? So, we're going to do present continuous for everyday activities. Okay, someone says this is the unit we're going to work on next. Fantastic. Good. I'm taking this slightly away from the, it's not a sort of topic-based thing. It's to teach a little bit of grammar to a lower level, perhaps a B1 level. Fantastic. She's arranging flowers. And this is a very strange picture, isn't it? Because you can also see, yeah, she's sitting above the pavement. She's an older person who's been put on a chair. This is actually in Lima by a performance artist. Yeah. And the idea is that the artist who did this wanted us to notice more the everyday things that people do. So she put them in this unusual situation. Exactly. So this woman is arranging flowers. So we could then take another picture. I'm just going to try and move it on if I can, if it'll work. So this one is in the book, but we can go and find similar pictures by the same artist. So what is happening in this picture? So we had the woman is arranging flowers, and what about in this picture? We've got two people doing something good. He's reading the newspaper, and there's another woman who looks a little surprised, maybe. Good. Okay, there's another woman looking out of the window who looks a little bit surprised. Yeah, fantastic. So this is very good for teaching present continuous. And the third thing I was going to say, so find interesting pictures is the second one. So do some physical activities to break variety activity. Keep that element of surprise. Use visually interesting stimuli like these pictures. And the third thing was to pace, to kind of vary the activity, vary the pace of activity. So let's stay on this subject of people doing everyday things. When it comes to pace of activity, sometimes we want people to get up and move around the classroom. They're not in a classroom though, and sometimes we want them to settle down. This is quite a nice one for getting people to settle down. And I'm sure Herbert over in the other room is talking about similar things because he does quite a lot with visualization. But I want you to imagine what I'd like you to do, so what I'd ask the students to do, is to close their eyes. So you can close your eyes if you want, or you can just do this with your imagination. And I want you to imagine that you're walking down your street, or you're walking a walk that's normal, that's typical for your walk to work, a walk to see a relative. So just imagine yourself doing that walk now. Imagine yourself on a street. I don't know where you are on the street. Maybe you've just left your house. Maybe you're nearer your destination. And along the way, you see someone. There's someone maybe you've seen before. And maybe you often see them. And I want you to think, what are they doing as you see them? Maybe it's someone in their front garden. Maybe it's someone doing a job in the street. I don't know. So either close your eyes and think of this, or just use your imagination and think of this typical journey. And you see someone. And what are they doing? What's happening? Okay, and now perhaps you could type in the box. Could people type in the box anything that they saw, something that they typically saw using the present continuous? Okay, so somebody watering plants. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to write for you the name of the, yeah. Somebody taking the trash out. Fantastic. Okay, that kind of thing. So what actually happens there is you've got a activity, the visualization activity, people smiling, where the students sort of settle down a bit. It's a change of pace, and that's important as well. It's another way of varying the activity. And then as you do the exchanges in open class with the group, you get some interesting ideas. You get some interesting student-to-student exchanges. Okay, so that was the idea of variety and of maintaining an element of surprise in a lesson. So not just going straight from the book all the time, but just sort of varying it a little bit with different types of activity. Someone walking dog, someone painting a fence. Fantastic. So I'm just waiting for the next slide. So the next thing is really about this weird paradox that we have here with online teaching, is that although people are much more distant, at the same time, there's this weird kind of intimacy about this. You are, I don't know if you're teaching from home or teaching from a classroom somewhere, but I've invited you, even though we're thousands of miles away from each other, here you are in my dining room at home. And if I was in a Zoom lesson, I would perhaps be with you in your home. So you've got this weird paradox of something being quite distant, but at the same time quite intimate. And that's something we can take advantage of. We can take advantage of that through kind of show and tell activities. So asking students to bring things, either you bring things, like I showed you earlier, the bouncing egg that my grandson loves, or you ask them to bring things. You ask them to bring pictures, perhaps, to show other students, to bring an object, their favorite object, something like that. Use realia from around you, yeah, from the classroom, perhaps, or get them to use it also. Which makes me think, I'm just going to move my chair for a minute. Am I going to move my chair? No, I won't move my chair. I just want you to write in the box, what have you noticed that you've seen behind me? When people sort of appear online very often, I don't know if this is the same in your country, very often people who are giving interviews on the TV appear with bookshelves behind them because they like to show the world what they're reading. And the books they read say something about them. I've chosen just to be in my living room, in my dining room, I mean. What did you notice? What I could do normally, an activity I could do normally, would be to, well, I can do this now, actually. If I just move, what I want you to say is, what have you noticed behind me? What things have you noticed behind me? What could you see? What objects could you see behind me? What I might do normally is move the screen. I'm not going to now because it's a little jerky, the screen, and I don't want to disturb things anymore. Good. Yes, so someone said they showed their dog and their daughter appeared. That's lovely, isn't it, when that happens? I know my students in Gaza, when my wife appears in the background or my grandchildren appear. They absolutely love that. They seem to love that idea of a sort of personal contact. Yeah. And someone's talking about their turtle appearing. Good. Good. So, or you might ask them objects that they've noticed, things that they've noticed while you've been teaching, as I did with you just now. I don't know if you found anything in the background. A curtain, that's right. An embroidered curtain. Good. I don't know what else you can see, really. I know what I can see in my camera. Yeah, it's a blue chair. Yeah, it's kind of a blue chair. It's not really a blue chair. I'll show you. It's a piece of Palestinian embroidery, which is the chair is actually just an ordinary chair, like a wooden chair. But it's one of my favorite pieces of Palestinian embroidery. Okay, which I always put over the back of the chair when I'm teaching. Good. Okay, good. Stones on the cupboard. Yeah, they're little bits of pottery. Yeah, good. Fantastic. Okay, great. So that idea of show and tell, bring an image, bring an object to class, it's very generative. And it's very easy to do because it's here at home. Maybe you could just ask one student to do it each time. Good, good, good. I'm just waiting for the next slide to come up. There was a very funny thing here in England where a few days ago where the Prime Minister gave a talk in a school, and the librarian he was giving a talk in the school library, and the librarian had put these books up with not very polite titles, things like The Twits, which is a Roald Dahl book, meaning the idiots, and another one was Betrayed. And they were all subtle messages about the Prime Minister and his government, and he didn't really notice what was behind him. Anyhow, okay, I'm just trying to move the slide on, and it's taking a long time. The last thing I would like to say is about using breakout rooms, and I don't know how it works so well in some of the other tools that you use. Certainly in Zoom, it's something I try to use quite sparingly. I use it for the kind of main activities. I find if I use them often, you can monitor in the breakout rooms, but it's not very satisfactory. It's not as easy to do as if you're walking around a classroom listening to groups speaking. So if we had a series of activities and you had three, it says now work in pairs, work in groups. Here we go. So I've got one here in front of me. This is from Life. It's from pre-intermediate in Life. And the students are being asked to talk about habits. And the first one says, work in pairs, find out about your partner's habits, ask questions with how often, and then use these ideas. And then they've got some ideas below. How often do you eat out in restaurants? How often do you play board games? How often are you stressed at work, and so on? Okay. The next activity says work in groups. Prepare a questionnaire about the lifestyle for another group. So you're going to make how often do you do things, but they're going to make some of their own questions within groups. And the third thing is then to work with another group and to ask their questions. So conduct the survey that they've just compiled. You can see here that the mechanics of engineering this get quite complicated. What you probably want to do is if you had a fairly weak group, if they were struggling, then you probably want to put them into breakout rooms for the first activity, to them do some sort of more safer control practice there, and then perhaps you'd do the other two activities collectively. If they were a kind of normal, stronger group, you would do the first thing in open class where it said work in pairs. You would nominate students across, and then the second activity you would do as a breakout room activity where they would then go and prepare the questionnaire. Okay, good. Let me just check the time. we're not doing very well because my computer's gone quite slow. I hope you can still hear me, all right? Good. I'm just trying to move on to the next item, which is the next problem, really. And the next problem was about check understanding. And how can you, in class, you can see, usually easily see if someone's confused, if they haven't paid attention. And online, that becomes much more difficult. So what do you do about that? The question is, what do we do about that? How do we deal with this problem of checking understanding? Well, the first thing is kind of repetition is obvious. Just repeat, repeat, repeat. The second thing is to make things relatable. So all the time, try and make sure that the ideas you're presenting, the words you're presenting, relate to students' own lives. And the third thing is then to revise. Let me try and move this on. And the third thing is then to try and revise the language that you've taught and the information that they've covered. I'm going to show you an example of this, if I can get through to my slide, which, as I say, is there's a bit of a... Okay, so Arena's asking, do they have the possibility to record their conversation in a breakout room? That's an interesting thing. Breakout rooms work in Zoom, and Ileana's asking how to set up a breakout room. They do, I'm not sure about the possibility of recording. I'm not sure about that one. The setup of, yes, has tutorial. Lucy's saying, thanks, Lucy. Hello, Lucy. Saying that Zoom has lots of tutorial videos on how to do breakout rooms. But certainly, you can either allocate people to the rooms yourself, or you can allow Zoom to do it automatically. You can just say, I want now divide this group into 4 rooms, and it will do it automatically and send them there. So they're not as frightening as they might seem. And then you can also go and visit people in the room and monitor them. Although, of course, as I said before, they might become more self-conscious than they might do if you were simply hovering around them in a classroom. Good. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my slides move on, and they're not really moving on. I don't know if they have for you. I don't know which one you're looking. If you're still looking at the one saying use breakout room sparingly. I've tried to move on to another one about blondin, but it hasn't really moved yet. So what I wanted to show you at this point was the idea of how to use a text, really. And I'll just, while I'm waiting for the text, I'll just kind of talk you through it. So we'd already talked about this idea of constantly calling on students and getting students to relay info to each other, which is very important, checking understanding. So they see a rubric, you ask the student to read the rubric, you then ask another student to explain it again, to explain it back to you, just so they know what they're doing. When it comes to reading, you can either ask the students to read, or a nice thing is to read yourself. So you've got a reading text in front of you, and you read and speak at the same time. Reading while listening aids comprehension. It's a well-known fact that if students listen and read at the same time, their comprehension level of something is much better than if they read in isolation or just listen in isolation. It also helps their reading speed because they're being carried along at the same time. What I wanted to show you, but my slides are just not moving, is the idea of, oh, here we go, fantastic. So it's just, let me just do this then, I'll just do the beginning. So is the idea of sort of involving them as you read. So I'm going to read this one. This is about the tightrope walker, Blondin. There was once a famous tightrope walker named Charles Blondin. He lived about 150 years ago. So can someone tell me when that was? 150 years ago. Could someone tell me what the date was? Okay. And so on we go on. Blondin could do many amazing things on a tightrope. He could stand on one leg. Can anyone here stand on one leg? But can you do it on a tightrope? He could sit on a chair. He could stop and make something to eat. He could even walk with his eyes closed. Blondin came from France, but he did many famous tightrope walks across the Niagara Falls, between Canada and the USA, a distance of 340 meters. That's like 3 football pitches or a bit more, one after the other. And 50 meters above the water. How high is 50 meters? Let's imagine you live in a block of flats. How many floors up would you be if you were 50 meters high, do you think? So then maybe the students suggest the answers. They say 10 floors or something like that. And then I say, does anyone live on the 10th floor? Yeah, well and do you look down sometimes? Yeah, well that's how high it was. Not funny. And imagine, what can he see below? And the students ask, and then we carry on. People said that it was impossible and that he could never do it. But he did it, not just once, but many times. And each time a crowd waited on the other side of the water to watch him, and each time they cheered loudly when he arrived. Do you remember what cheer meant? Can you all do it? Okay, and so it goes on. So you're involving them at the same time. So rather than just reading right through the whole thing, you're constantly relating it to them and involving them in it. And it's a way to, I won't go to the end of the story. It's a shame, really. It's a great story. It's from Look Level 4, primary course, Look Level 4. You then model activities with them. That's terribly important in this situation. So after this, how are we doing for time? We haven't got very long. Sorry, it's just taken much longer to get through the slides because of this sort of lag that I've experienced. So revising and consolidating we have. So you go through the words afterwards. Either you might call on different students to do the words, or you could get them to reconstitute the words using the story. You could tell the story themselves and get them to fill in the words as you go. And my next point was about modelling activity. So this is the activity. Imagine you're watching and waiting for Blondin on the other side of the falls. Have a conversation with the person next to you. Okay, so now, rather than just putting them in pairs and breakout rooms to do that straight away, it's very important to model these activities. So we'll start off and do it. So I'll do it. I'll call on one student. I'll say, Andrea, so let's do this together. Hang on. Andrea, can you see anything yet? I'm looking, but I can't see anything. Can you see anything? And Andrea talks. And then we model the conversation between us. The last thing for aiding comprehension is like setting creative drills. So imagine your students, these are A2 students now, have been doing irregular past verbs. The first time they've come across irregular past verbs. Sleep, sit, sleep, slept, sit, sat, go, went, and so on. Okay. As a way of confirming comprehension. They've got some exercises to do in their workbook or whatever, but just give them something a little bit more creative to do. For example, I want you to make and memorize 3 sentences that you about yourself as a child. So they get them to choose 3 different ages, and they make a sentence with this pattern. When I was boop, I beeped. So for example, when I was 4, I slept on the floor. Something like that. Okay, and they make sentences like that. So just have creative exercises for them. Think of little creative things they can do that helps them memorize language. Good. The third point, and I'm nearly coming to the end, and I'm sorry I've had to rush over some things, is about checking enjoyment and response. Because that's one of the most difficult, I mean, it's a difficult thing in teaching anyway, let's face it. You've sometimes got students who are looking like bored or not very interested, and you never really know. Perhaps sometimes some of them say to you, oh, thanks, I really enjoyed that lesson. You're absolutely surprised. They didn't look like they were enjoying it during the lesson. Online, it seems even more difficult to check for that student enjoyment or response, to get that feedback. Facebook Live, I don't know how it is something else. Facebook Live is very good like that because you have the possibility to press like, so you can see these little thumbs up buttons coming up the screen as you're teaching sometimes, or sometimes even little heart buttons when they love an activity. But it's not so easy otherwise. I mean, so there are various solutions to this. One thing is an anonymous poll. You can do anonymous polls in most of these tools. Zoom, it's certainly true. And just ask them did they learn something new? Did they enjoy the lesson? And so on. Yes, you could simply ask them to volunteer at the end of the lesson, something you liked or didn't like, the main thing you learned, something you didn't understand or want to know more about. And the third thing is perhaps just to give research activities. It's a good barometer, a good measure of whether they enjoyed the lesson as to whether they actually do some research activities. So one example would be find a photo that you think reflects the topic of the lesson and bring it to the next lesson. That would be one possibility. Maybe this one with the tightrope would be find example of other tightrope walkers, something like that. Those sorts of things, and do beware of setting homework and then forgetting to get it back. But those kind of research activities can be a good barometer, a good measure for you of whether they enjoyed the content. Sorry I had to rush the last bit a little bit. I think I may finish there. I think I should stop there. I think Anka would like me to stop there because I've gone about to the end. Yeah. Does anyone, I'm just going to show you one thing. We'll just revise the thing. So just one last thing I would say is the benefits, and I'm sure some of you do this, of recording your sessions and then looking back afterwards. It can be a horrible experience. I don't like doing it myself. But when you do that, just think about these things. How could I have prevented them becoming more passive or being passive? Were there places where I could have increased their level of activity? Did I check understanding enough? And thirdly, did I get any feedback from them at the end? Did I know how much they'd understood it, how much they'd enjoyed it, and so on? Okay. I think that's about all I have time for now, and I'm sorry if it was a bit jerky. It was a bit at this end. It weirded me out a bit, but that is online teaching and presenting for you, isn't it? I'd be very interested to know if you felt engaged yourself during the presentation, or not so much. The engagement was made quite difficult by the staticness of it. And if you have any other questions I'd be very happy to answer any other questions or by email or whatever. If they're transferred via Fisher, I'd be very happy to send you any of the information contained in this, or send you the presentation if you're interested in seeing it again. Be only too happy to. I was trying to get up a little cartoon I had at the end also, but now it's not moving either. I found a little cartoon the other day about the return to school. I don't know if people are going back to school in Romania already. Perhaps they're going back to a regular school. And it was just a little cartoon, if I can find it, about somebody having to transfer back from online teaching to classroom teaching again. And if it comes up, well, good. If it doesn't, never mind. I can send you the presentation. So it's very nice to see you, and I wish you all the best of luck in your teaching. And I really hope that the next time I see you, it'll be face to face in Romania.